Hello, listener. So, you like scary movies? Well, it is a creepy night, and with all those crazy lunatics out there, well, you really shouldn't be alone. Ooh, you look so freaked out right now. Now I suggest you listen very carefully. Subscribe to Class Horrorcast, or I'll gut you like a fish. Enjoy the show. I'll be watching.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Class Horrorcast. I'm your host Aaron, and in this week's episode, I had two very special guests join me. Grace and Eimear are the creators and hosts of the Because You Were Home podcast. Each week, these two best friends take a look at different movies and topics within the horror world. If you're a fan of horror or just enjoy a good podcast, then please subscribe to these two lovely ladies. They're also Irish and really good crack. I hope everyone enjoys listening to some of our comfort horror movies as much as we did talking about them. So guys, really appreciate you coming on the show. For the handful of people that mightn't have heard of your podcast, who are you guys and what are you about?
I'm always like, Eimear, do you want to take this? And she's like, no.
No, I'm pointing right at you. Like, I don't want to be the talker. Well, we are Because You're Home, and we're two lassies who like to talk about horror movies a lot and kind of different themes about them. And we have been going since August 2020, just having a laugh, doing what we love. We've been friends since we were like in primary school, so since we were maybe 11 or 12, maybe even younger, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Probably. We had this one friend who united us all. So you guys were friends with Shauna and then maybe when 9 or 10, I don't know, some stage. My memory of my childhood is really patchy. But myself and Grace, like all our friends are into horror. And our friend's birthday is on Halloween. So for her birthday, we'd always do sleepovers and watch horror movies way before we should have. But yeah, like myself and Grace, as we got older, we just still always like it kind of almost a little bit more than the rest of the girls. We would talk more about horror and we'd watch a lot of the latest ones that would come out, whereas maybe not everyone else would. And Grace came up during lockdown to me and was like, we should totally do a horror podcast. And at first I was like, no, that's like, what would we talk about? Who would even want to listen to us? And then, that was pre-lockdown. And then during lockdown, Grace came at me with the image.
I was like, we have no excuse now. You have nothing to do. We have nowhere to go. We're doing it. So
yeah, that was kind of like June 2020, and then we came together, and I think our first episode came out in August, and it's just been an absolute blast. And then we get to talk to like people like yourself, and it's like our friendships and like that with people are growing, and we are having to watch different kinds of horror movies that we say might have been always meaning to watch, and looking more into behind the scenes and different themes and topics that come up from different subgenres of horror. So it's been great. Like I have to say, I'm loving it.
It's funny because so many people seem to have kind of a similar story. I think maybe had an idea about starting something like this, and I think the whole pandemic thing kind of prompted a lot of people to just go and do it.
There has to be like around the world millions more podcasts that have just started up because of this. It's like saturated the market.
Yeah, and you're right as well about the movies and stuff. I done a watch party with the guys from Plastic Fangs recently, and we watched Toxic Avenger, and I was actually ashamed to admit that I don't think I'd ever sat down and watched the entire movie.
No, I know enough about it, but I haven't seen it, and I really do want to watch it because it's going to be gross, but it's going to be great.
It's so good.
And from your reaction as well, Aaron, because I was listening to that episode and you were like, I really didn't think I'd like this as much as I do. I'm actually really have a look at it as well.
And it's become a real cult classic.
Yeah, and a part of the reason normally I would try and like find out everything about the movie and how it was made and what went on and all this stuff, and I think part of the reason I didn't do it for that was because I just felt like I wasn't going to like it at all. So I couldn't get behind it. I was like, I don't really know if I'm going to care enough to go and do this. Yeah. And like, at the end of it, I was kind of a little bit, not annoyed, but I found myself watching the movie and kind of getting drawn into it. And the two lads were talking. And I was just laughing at stuff with no context.
Yeah.
It's good.
Other people's enthusiasm can change a film for you.
It's worth watching though.
No, I definitely want to have a watch. And I want to watch more movies kind of within that world.
Can either of you guys, whoever wants to take it first, can you remember the first horror movie you ever saw? Or a lot of times it mightn't be a horror movie. People have maybe an episode of a TV show or something that's not even scary that scared you.
I grew up watching the X-Files a lot at home with my it was my mom. It'd go out to play bingo with her mom, and so it would be myself, my brother and my dad. I think it was every Thursday, and like he'd go get us stuff from the shop, like some crisps and drink, and I'd always start every episode sitting on my own chair, but by the climax, like the last third, I'd be on the sofa with him with his hand around my eyes so I wouldn't have to watch it. And it was like clockwork every episode. I'm like, no, don't worry, Dad, this time I'm going to be able to remain in my seat for the whole time. No, every time. And then I think the first horror movie I remember seeing was The Exorcist, and I think I was only 9 or 10. And I don't think we watched it all, but I watched enough to be like, I don't think I should be watching this.
Yeah. I think in our house it's weird. They're not particularly horror movies, but we grew up like the kids kind of movies or the staple movies in my house when I was growing up were Rocky Horror, The Labyrinth, and Return to Oz, which are just kind of strange movies in themselves. So it was always kind of, it was almost like I was predisposed to love anything a little bit odd and different. And then I think I always kind of thought the first Halloween movie we watched at one of Shauna's parties was Halloween, but it actually turns out it's definitely Halloween 4 or 5, I think was one of the first Halloween.
No wonder I don't remember it.
Yeah.
Such a classic.
But yeah, I think the one that changed it all for me was probably, or that really cemented everything, was Scream.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the Rocky Horror, Labyrinth, and like Goosebumps and stuff like that definitely were my gateway anyway.
I remember being afraid of is it a giant wolf in the Neverending Story? The bad guy?
Yes.
I remember being like afraid of that.
My sisters were obsessed with that film, and because they liked it so much, I actually refused to watch it, and I've never sat down and watched it properly because they were so obsessed with it. And I was just real like, no, I'm never seeing that. No.
That happens if someone likes something so much, or if something is so popular with people. I'm like, it'll take years before I'll actually see it.
Yeah. If
I ever see it.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Even with all the hype recently, it's not horror, but is it I can't remember his name, the Justice League movie.
Oh, the Zack Snyder cut.
Yeah. And like I really want to see it on one hand, but just because so many people have been gone on about it now and you can't escape it, I'm like, I don't care anymore. I don't even.
It's also 4 hours of your life.
And it's just like that to me.
I watched it one night in full. Should have probably broken it up a bit, but yeah,
like
it's an experience.
That to me, if I see a movie now that's like over 90 minutes, I'm like, this is a huge investment now.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
and especially like if I'm in work the next day, I'm like, now I can't be watching this beyond 9 p.m. It's cutting into my bedtime.
I'll even do that with TV shows. I'll be like, okay, I'll watch an episode of something instead because I haven't got time or the investment to go and watch an hour and a half or something.
Yeah.
Do you think streaming changed all that? Because I remember before, like you would pick out a movie or you would go to Extravision or wherever and pick out something. And like,
a lot more planning put into it.
Yeah, and like, do you think because we're just overexposed, you've got everything all the time, you don't really feel the need to ever actually watch anything?
Yeah, it was such an event. Like on a Friday, you would go down, you would go down after work or after school or something, and it was a thing. You'd go in. I still remember when I was younger who used to out of the town work in our Extravision. And like, if I saw them now, I'd be like, oh, that's the guy from Extravision. And then years later, I actually worked in our Extravision as well. And it was a big thing. And then when you have streaming now, it's just instant.
I also spend more time looking for a film than watching a film. Yeah, it's not even funny how long I'll look at the trailer for it, and I'll go through sections, and then I'll have wasted an hour, and then I can't watch a film. It's too late.
Story of my life.
Yeah.
Story of my life. And I have so many different apps. Like I have Shudder, Amazon Prime, Netflix, all the usual stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like this weird, like, I heard someone refer to it as analysis paralysis, where I'll just overanalyze every movie, watch every trailer, every interview about it, and then I'm like, no, that looks crap. Or I'll put it on for 5 minutes and go, crap, pick the next film. Yeah. I'm like, no, this looks bad, next film. And it's so funny because I remember going to Extravision, or we had a place here called Movie Magic, and you know, you would go there, you might spend a while in the shop picking the stuff out, but once you had it, then that was, you were invested. Now I'm going to watch this till the end.
Yeah.
Good or bad, this was you for the night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you had to rewind it.
Oh yeah.
That's true. Actually, I forgot about that. So I guess we'll get into the meat of this, which is comfort horror movies. Do you guys have some things in mind?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, well, whoever wants to, ladies first. So whoever wants to take the first one.
Yeah, I had a couple of them, and it's funny actually when we were talking about doing this episode. I've been really busy in work, and my usual thing, I think, I did art in college, so it was very practical. So you didn't have to be sitting down and like writing papers upon papers. So I had like a lot of time where I could sit and watch movies. So now if I really need to concentrate on something, I put a movie on in the background. So while I was doing this project, and I wrote it down because I was like, this is beyond doing the project. In one day, I watched American Mary, The Hitcher, Curve, and Beneath, just while doing this project for work. And I was like just putting on horror movie after horror movie, because I just, in a weird way, and I suppose it's not a weird way if you're in this kind of world, they are comfort. You know what you're going to get a lot of the time. But yeah, I think my top one, and I asked my husband this as well. I was like, if I was to say what movie would I just go to straight away if it was a horror movie? And he was like 100% Prom Night from 2008. I'm obsessed with that movie. I've seen it so many times. I actually made my mom watch it last night, and she's not a horror movie person. And I was like, this bit is really funny. And she was like, none of this is funny, Grace. She was like, this is awful. And I was like, no, it's really funny. The way he screams, it's really funny.
That guy.
Yeah. And I said, this is possibly one of my favorite kill scenes in any movie. And she went, a what? And I was like, kill scene. And she was like, your favorite kill scene. And I was like, yes, Mom.
That's everything a mother wants to hear. Yeah.
So she was just like, oh, gosh, I'm so proud. But yeah, definitely Prom Night for me is kind of my number one. So it's, I'm sure you guys know the story, but it follows Donna going to her senior prom. Supposed to be the best night of her life. But her killer teacher has broken out from prison and is trying to find her again after slaughtering her entire family 3 years.
As you do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing.
Boy meets girl, boy kills girl's parents.
Yeah. Yeah, and like the teacher, he is played by the actor who's in another one of my favorite movies, and it's not a horror movie, but That Thing You Do. And I'm so obsessed with that movie. So anything any of that cast are in, I watch. So I think that's how I found Prom Night. But I think that would be my number one comfort horror.
I remember going to see that in the cinema actually. And it's funny, I did not expect you to mention that movie. That's a movie that I actually really enjoy, and I don't ever really hear anyone talking about it. Same as I really like the remake of When a Stranger Calls.
I love that. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's funny now that I'm thinking of it, I'm like, wow, I should have wrote that down. But that's another one of those ones that just seems to just pass by and nobody really talks
Yeah,
about it anymore.
the late 2000s was a bit of a dark time for horror, and it's like you'll forget that there were gems mixed in amongst it all.
Now, I was looking it up in Prom Night, and one of the reviews is just like terrible. And it was like underneath horrific acting. And I was like, it's amazing. It's so good. And like that, the way you were saying, Aaron, about going in, I like, this is one of those movies that I've watched the interviews from. I've watched like the background. So I know that Brittany Snow, she never got to go to her own prom. And like all of these things about it. And two of the cast members were going out together, and Brittany actually kicks Richard Fenton in the face at the end. And his reaction is real because she did loaf him in the face. But yeah, that movie, it just makes me happy.
It's I just had a look there on IMDb, and the first review for it is could be used in a horror film school as textbook example for what not to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
1 out of 10. And then a huge essay about how bad it is.
Wow. When they put in that much time and effort.
Yeah.
You know what? I had this conversation with somebody recently, and I've started to disregard. I used to look at a lot of that stuff and then base what I'd watch off of that.
Yeah.
And the amount of times that I've watched something and then looked up the reviews and it has like 1 out of 10 and it has like 100,000 reviews, and I'm like, I fucking love that. I was like, is everyone mental?
Yeah.
I just stopped because I feel like now as well there's a culture of people who might not even watch the movie or just already go into it going, this is trash, and they just review things and they're just like, trash, terrible, and it's like they do it to everything.
Yeah, I think IMDb has a nasty habit of putting the bad reviews at the top, and you're like, okay, you know, and it might be only like the first 10 where they're saying how bad it is, but the general consensus is that it could be midway film or it could be actually kind of decent, you know, a happy surprise. But just IMDb will put up all the 1 out of 10 and 2 out of 10, so you're like, okay.
Yeah, I've noticed that when you look at their most helpful reviews for anything, and obviously especially horror because so many people shit on it, but it nearly always has the only ones you can see as you're scrolling, and as you click into reviews, they're nearly always the negative ones. I don't know whether that's just because it attracts people to it, like negativity or whatever, but
Possibly.
it's kind of a weird...
Misery does love company.
It's true, isn't it? What about you? What's your first...
So I was looking at, say, maybe my top 3 comfort films, and I realized like I look at them for their own separate reasons. So kind of like one of the ones I go to, Silence of the Lambs, is kind of like my go-to if I want a thinking horror. And I could also just listen to Anthony Hopkins, like probably read him anyway to me. I love just I know he's only in the film for like 16 minutes, but they're gold. So it's, to me, it's like, it's funny enough, as you were talking about, it's one I have to dedicate time to. It's over 2 hours long, so I have to know that I really want to watch it. But it's one of those, I don't necessarily watch a horror movie to death where I'll watch it like 10 times over, but I love to give it a year or two and then watch it again, because then it's like you see little facets of something you might not have seen. And I've seen it now so much where I'm still surprising myself by seeing little details within the film that I hadn't seen maybe before or I'd forgotten all about. So we all know that it's Clarice Starling. She's an intern FBI in training. And she's on the hunt with her team to catch Buffalo Bill, and she has to get the help of the cannibalistic psychiatrist Hannibal Lecter. And all the lols ensue whilst they are trying to catch the skinning Buffalo Bill.
And as Eimear says, a romantic movie.
It is. It got released on Valentine's Day, and they had their finger rub moment when he's passing back all the notes to Clarice.
You'll sign this cross.
I will. No, it's also the book. It's actually the sequel, and it's not, because I've read Silence of the Lambs, but it's in Hannibal. In that sequel, it's they have sex. Yeah. No, I'm so glad I didn't read that one, because it went off in a way. I think it's just meant to be inferred. But yeah, it's just this subtle romance. Subtle.
So subtle.
Yeah. No, I love that film. And yeah, I and it's one where like my husband he used to watch a lot more horror and now he's kind of eased off of it, but he'll sit down and he'll watch that with me. He'll be like, yeah, no, this is good.
Yeah.
When you think about some of your comfort horror movies, do you think there's always some nostalgia in it for you? Is that maybe what brings you back to it as well?
Kind of, because that would have been one of the films that I remember like watching home with my entire family. Like it's not just something I watched by myself in my bedroom when I was a teenager or something. I think it's one where the whole family have watched it, and it's one where you could discuss with, say, more than just your close-knit friends who are into horror. It's always something that can be like that discussed with a larger group. So yeah, it is something that I do remember watching from when I was much younger, because it came out in like 91. So I've seen it sporadically throughout my life at different stages.
Yeah. I suppose one of mine, actually two of mine that I would kind of think of comfort are definitely linked to memories. And then, yeah, the others are put on because I was doing work or something and then just fell in love with them, so just keep watching them over and over. And as well, I really love, I actually love horror. Now this is out of the pandemic, so myself and my husband used to go out quite a bit pre-pandemic. We live really close to the nightclub in our town. We'd go out on a Friday night or a Saturday night. He'd kind of lie in on a Saturday morning and I'd go downstairs, and what I used to love about a Saturday morning is I'd get up. I'm a very late hangover person, so my hangover won't hit until quite late. But I'd get up and I'd, 9 times out of 10, still be a bit drunk. And I would put on horror movies and watch them pretty much all morning, just eating loads of food and having the best morning ever. So for me, that's kind of like my
And I feel like that as well.
Experience.
Yeah, that it's one of those things, isn't it, where I guess it's always tied back to an experience. And I think I've tried to think about why I like collecting movies or stuff from movies, or even when I got into the whole videotape kick again. And I think it's that when you hold that physical thing in your hand again or whatever, or you talk to somebody about a certain movie, a lot of times you're probably thinking back to something as well. It doesn't now I'm not saying that I like all the movies I like for certain reasons, but there's definitely, with a lot of them, there's maybe some sort of memory. Or when you mentioned Prom Night, straight away I thought about the old cinema that's now closed down in Wexford. I can like vividly remember going to see it, and like in my mind going to see it, I felt like I was in the opening scene from Scream 2.
Yeah.
Because it was like the cinema was so busy and it was all great and everybody was into horror and it was like this buzz. Now, it probably wasn't like that, but in my mind,
That's the
I have
memory.
this weird memory of it, and like the popcorn was so much nicer back then and everything was this, and they had that weird red cinema carpet. And
Oh yeah, sticky.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And all
funny.
the toilet paper up on the ceiling. Or is
it's
that
such a
just
weird-
Drogheda?
No, that I think that's everywhere.
It's universal.
At least in Ireland anyway.
Yeah.
One of my first ones, I tried to pick, because I would say I probably have hundreds of things I would consider comfort horror in a way.
Yeah.
I have so many, like somebody brings up a movie and I'm like, oh yeah, that movie.
Yeah.
And then I'm
Yeah.
like, I really want to watch that again. But I tried to pick some stuff that maybe was a bit more obscure and not as much talked about. My first one is a movie that came out in 2007 called Vacancy. Any of you guys ever seen it?
Yes.
That
It's one of the Wilsons, Owen Wilson, isn't it?
Luke Wilson and
Luke
Kate.
Wilson.
Sorry.
Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
God,
yeah.
Yeah, that was a movie that I like randomly discovered on like Channel 4 or something one night at like 1 a.m. And it just so happened I had that feeling. I was like getting ready to go to bed or something, and then it came on and I was like, what's this? And then I went and got like food, and I was just kind of sitting there, and before I knew it, like an hour and a half went past and I was like glued to that film.
Yeah.
And it always reminds me then of that feeling. I would always, whenever I watch it, I always watch it like late at night. I don't know why, it just reminds me of that first time I came across. Yeah.
Yeah.
But basically the story is a couple who are, I'm not sure where they're coming back from. I can't remember, but they're going through a divorce, or they're in the process of getting divorced. And he swerves to avoid a raccoon or something like that, I think it is, and ends up crashing the car. The car breaks down. They find like a shitty motel and get a room for the night. And then he puts in videotapes, I think it is at the time. And after a while, he realizes that the snuff movies he's watching are in the same room that he's in at that point. And from there, it just kind of... I remember the part where they first realize it. And, like, it's not that scary, but, like, for some reason, movies like that make me feel a bit... I wouldn't say afraid, but it gives me that weird anxiety kind of butterfly feeling. Like, what would I do in that situation if I was stuck?
It's what I do like about horror is that I will often put myself in that situation. Well, I would do this, this, and this, or I'd try to do that, or it's often one of the things I try to do, which I found in any room I'm in. If someone came to attack me, I could be in the dentist waiting room, and I'm like, what can I do? What are my weapons? What person can I throw at them first? Yeah, it's something I like to do to pass the time. I remember like being in the bathroom of my family home going, right, well, it was holding some sand or something. And I'm like, that's heavy enough. I bashed him in the head with this. And yeah, so it's just one of those ones where I often, when I'm watching a horror movie, I like to think, how would I get through that?
And I think that's why people take to it so much. Somebody else had said that to me a while ago about, you know, it's, I suppose, a safe way of living out in your mind, maybe some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And we were looking at, I had watched, I'm sure you've seen it on Shudder, Why Horror?
Yeah, yeah.
And when they're talking about it, and I think he kind of quotes, was it John Carpenter or Stephen King or something, but they were saying that it was like this combined experience that people go and they're scared together, and it's
that's
combined
LJC.
fear. Yeah. And then you share that experience, and then you can go and you're fine. Safe. And I went, or it was at home, but you are safe. And there's almost a comfort in that.
And I always find as well, maybe not, well, I guess with everybody, but I notice it a lot with people who were horror fans. You'll find like that, you know, being afraid or this whole feeling of anxiety throughout a film, it's always followed by laughing or like people being, I had went to Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando for 6 or 7 years in a row, and I always noticed that when you come out the other end of the haunted house, whatever you want to call it, everybody would come out, like, you know, you'd see people running out screaming or afraid, but it would always be followed by groups of people laughing and everybody like super hyped up talking about it.
Yeah.
It's funny, it's like a weird roller coaster for people, even if you are terrified.
Yeah, it's like if someone screams in the cinema, it's almost great for everyone else because it elicits a laugh and you're like, oh my God.
Break that.
But yeah, with Vacancy, funny actually, for a while I thought this movie was called No Vacancy because...
Yeah, I was about to say, I thought that was his name.
Yeah, because on the artwork...
On the cover.
Yeah, and on the cover it has no vacancy, but only vacancy is lit up.
It's lit up.
And I looked into it and apparently the movie was never called No Vacancy. And I could have swore...
I was just going to say.
Yeah, I could have swore that movie was called No Vacancy because I remember saying it to people before and they were like, no, I've never heard of it. Now, I don't think very many people have heard of the film anyway, but I was like, no, I've never heard of it. But
it was obviously a big deal in Ireland. Big news here.
Do you know what's funny? From talking to different filmmakers and all, I don't think a lot of people realise as well, though, when there's stuff I think that takes off over here.
Yeah.
Now, it mightn't be, like, you mightn't be talking millions of people, like, but there's stuff that I've mentioned and they're like, really?
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was I spoke to, and they said, yeah, the movie didn't do so well in the States. And I was like, I remember when that came out, everybody was talking about it over here. And he was like, really? I was like, yeah. And yesterday, I was talking to the director of Escape Room, and he was saying that movie was extremely popular in Pakistan.
Wow.
Randomly, like they have this urban legend there that there's some witch, I think. So he had made a movie called The Taking of Deborah Logan.
Yeah.
They have an urban legend that there's a witch, I think, that lives in a cave or something in Pakistan, and they used a photo from the end of Deborah Logan, and it was like used in this meme, and everybody was like, "This is actually the witch from Pakistan."
Yeah.
And he said since then, like his movies, the popularity just went up and up and up. But he was saying it accounted for like huge figures.
Oh wow, yeah,
that's so cool.
You always forget that because I'm like, oh, okay, it's either big in Europe or North America, and there's no regions other than that.
No, yeah, nowhere else.
Nowhere else.
Yeah, but I suppose China and all those places, like, it can be huge for a movie and can make or break it.
You'll see that with a lot of action films now, where the production company is Chinese, or it's filmed in China, or like the last half of it's in China. Like they're just pandering to them because they're like, well, most of you guys are going to watch it.
There's when I was reading up about Vacancy, I seen, because I was wondering where the idea came from. I always wondered that about movies. Like where specifically did somebody get the inspiration or whatever? And apparently the writer, he's a guy by the name of Mark Smith. He used to live in Colorado with his wife, and they would drive to New Mexico. And I was looking up some of the area. It's like those huge highways, and you just have all like weird deserted motels and trailer parks or whatever. But he was saying that they used to always not have a game, but they always used to talk in the car about, how do these motels stay open? We've been doing this drive for like 10, 15 years. And they're still open.
I can only imagine they put booby traps in the road to make the car break down. So you have to stay nearby.
and that's where he said he came up with the idea. He was like, I just came up with the idea of, what if that was like a trap for people and they would sell these snuff movies of people, and I think initially it might have started out as kind of a hostile idea where people would come then to torture you.
I cannot think of the name of the family, but it's just that ignited something in my brain. There was an American family, possibly, or they were an immigrant family in the 1800s in America, and they had a B&B. They turned their house for people to stay over. But they had like trapdoors in the house and stuff, and I think their surname began with an S. But they take on like a lot of single men as they were on their way through parts of America, and they'd be eating at the dinner table, and then someone would just cut their throat. They'd pull back their chair, be a trapdoor, go down into the basement. And they would take all their money, and sometimes if times were up, they'd eat the person.
I've heard of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think it was like they'd had a very good-looking daughter, and the daughter would like make the men feel comfortable, and she'd flirt with them a bit, and then it would be boom, killed. And they went through so many people.
It's Get Out. It's the film Get Out.
But they were killing them instead of using their bodies.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a big family affair.
That's
not remember. Yeah.
I think sometimes I don't realize how many movies, just when I'm looking at like some of the names of movies, and like when you hear about the inspiration, because a lot of times I think, oh, you just have a really good imagination, but then you hear a lot of these people base this stuff off of maybe a seed of reality, and that's actually kind like, even when you mention Get Out there, that's another movie that like scared the shit out of me. Not necessarily like not even jumpy really, but just I had this weird feeling of like tension watching that.
That bingo, the auction scene where it's like they all had the bingo sheets, that, because it was all in silence because he wasn't that far away, and you're just like, oh, holy shit, because you don't know what they want him for yet, and you're just like, oh god. I thought it was like that they were all, bigoted racists, and that they were just going to have a black man to do with what they wanted, torture, kill, whatever, kind of like in Hostel. But then when you find out what it's for, you're just like, oh, that's even worse.
Yeah, and it's one of those things as well. I would imagine we're all probably the same. Where now we've seen so many movies, you've watched so much stuff, researched so much stuff, that you'll find that you nearly know the like algorithm for a movie. You'll be looking at it and going, I kind of know where this is going.
Yeah.
I won't say it completely caught me off guard, But I remember the scene where he finds the photographs of her with all the other guys.
Yes.
And I was like, I felt myself like holding my breath, and I was like, holy fuck. And then he tries to like act as if he didn't. And the part where they get to the bottom of the stairs and he realizes when he's like, get the keys. And then eventually she kind of breaks character and changes into like a bitch or whatever.
I thought she was going to be like this, like, I didn't know that they were doing this kind of thing. And
when she changes and just his reaction, that had my heart racing, and straight away it was that thing again. I had like transported myself there, and I was like, what in God's name would you actually do though if you were stuck there and
you're so outnumbered?
And you're on the stairs and they're all at the bottom of the stairs, and it's like, what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah,
terrifying.
I had this weird thing where my for a while I wanted to get like hypnotized to like stop overeating. And I was like looking into it, and you can actually get like this hypnotherapy, basically gastric band, right? And I was like, I'm totally going to do this. This is going to be great, and I'm going to be so skinny. And after watching that movie, I was like, I can't do that, because they could do anything while I'm under there, and they could like imprint or implant anything into my mind, and I'd have no idea. So I was like, I can't do it at all.
I didn't really believe in the whole hypnosis thing. And then I went to see Keith Barry in the Opera House in Wexford, and we were sitting front row, and I don't know how or why it even happened, but somehow I ended up on stage anyway for an hour and a half hypnotized, and it was just so bizarre. Now when I think about it, I can remember doing all the stuff. So like he had there was at one point he was like, right, the men on stage, you're going to be giving birth, and then all the women on stage are going to be the midwives, so we're going to act it out exactly. You're going to feel everything exactly like it would feel. You're going to think this, think that. And I remember sitting in the chair with my eyes closed, and I'm not really one for like, that's a 1,000-seater opera house. Don't really want to be up on stage with everyone looking at me.
No,
I didn't even feel anxious or nervous or anything, but I remember when he was saying the things, in my head I was like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, you're still trying to fight it.
It was, and I don't know whether it's because I've looked into it since, and like, you know, some people reckon it's one of those things where it's not necessarily hypnosis, it's this weird influence thing where they put pressure on you to like perform. So rather, because I will say he did start out the whole thing of like, anyone up here who doesn't believe in hypnosis or is trying to fight it, I'll be calling you on your bullshit and I'll make a fool of you in front of everyone. And like, it was all kind of, you know, a joke kind of thing, part of the show. And he was like randomly telling people to leave the stage, people that he said couldn't be hypnotized or were whatever. And I don't know whether part of that played into it, where I was like, I'm not doing this, but also I don't want to be outed.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to do whatever you say.
Yeah, and then I'll just tell people I was hypnotized.
And I don't know, like I remember going for food afterwards, and like I bumped into somebody who must have been there, and they were like, oh, you're the fella that got hypnotized, is it real? And I was like, I actually don't know. And I still don't know.
Warren's cousin is actually trained in it. Like he did like loads of stuff with like magician stuff in Ireland, and like he's brilliant at it. And then he went on, he trained in hypnosis, and now I can't talk to him anymore.
I'm so glad was he at your wedding?
Yes.
I'm so glad he did not try any of that bullshit on any of us, because a friend of mine from work like that went to a wedding where they had a hypnotist on it, and she said the stuff he had them doing, because it's a wedding, drinks are flowing, and because it was the entertainment, she said it was horrific. I actually, on my freshers week at college, something real similar, could have even been a lesser known Keith Barry, because it was a new CD, so you never know, it could have been him. Because it's what you're saying, it was very similar. There were some people who he was telling, like I was way back up at the back, so thank God I wasn't picked for anything. But like that, there were people who he was sending away, the hypnotist was sending away, and then stuff that people were being made to do, like say women were being told, oh, you're your backside's getting like 10 times bigger, and they were just trying to move, and everything, like something that you're self-conscious about is getting bigger, and you can see guys are trying to cross their legs and everything, and then you're just but you're like that going, I don't think you would normally even play along with that. Like there's a level of you where you're probably not in control of it. Like you were probably almost looking at yourself doing it, or thinking of yourself doing it. I'm not going to do it. Yet you're doing it because you've lost a certain amount of control.
That was exactly, I remember when he first pulled everyone up on stage, it wasn't, a lot of people think it's like an instant, like he just clicks his fingers and everybody. He had this set of lights that you couldn't see from the crowd.
Okay.
Oh.
And I can't remember exactly, but I want to say it was a set of like, it looked like 4 spotlights, but he had everybody look at them for like, I want to say like 10, 15 minutes, and he was like talking and talking and talking. Like there was complete silence other than just his voice. And I don't know whether it was just part of the act, but he was saying like this was how he was able to test who could take it or not. Yeah, who was open to it and who was this and who was that. He was like, it depends on a lot of different factors, you know, whether or not
that would really kind of make you feel disorientated.
Well, I remember at the end of it, he was like, you know, when everybody wakes up from this, you're going to have the best night's sleep. You're going to wake up tomorrow super motivated.
I'd be hypnotized if I could get a good night's sleep.
And like do everything you want to do and all this stuff. And I remember genuinely, like I went to sleep that night. I was like super tired when I left. Woke up the next day, felt great, felt amazing. I don't know whether it was just...
was it psychosomatic or...
Yeah, like I don't want to say like I fell for the gimmick, but I don't know whether him implanting that was like some weird like placebo thing. Or there's actually more to that.
Yeah.
Bizarre. It was very bizarre.
Yeah.
I'd say so.
So what other, who wants to take their next?
Emer, do you want to go with your next
I'll have
one?
a go. And it's it could be a bit controversial because it's more of a comedy than horror. It is my this is one where I will watch again and again. I won't even give a break. I do this almost every year if I could. And it's Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein.
Nice.
And this is I can even pinpoint when it became a comfort film for me. One, it was kind of like, again, something we all watch as a family. And because I say it means a lot to me to watch a film in my family. My mom is not really a film person. She's just kind of like, I can't sit down for 2 hours or an hour and a half and just watch it or whatever, you know, so she would rarely even come to the cinema with us when I was a child. But, this was one where we all watched and we all loved it. Like, and I would have completely opposing film tastes with my brother. So for us all to really like a film together means a lot to me. But I remember I was in my leaving cert year of secondary school, and I had basically, I think, some form of a breakdown. I had a huge fight with some of my group of friends from that year. And I just remember like I was having panic attacks in the classroom and I couldn't be there. Like I remember I had to be taken home from school. My dad had to take me home. And I remember on the biography channel, there was the history of the making of like the Young Frankenstein. And they had like Gene Wilder on it and Madeleine Kahn, like all the actors from it. And they were talking about it, like how Gene Wilder loved it so much. He added on all these scenes at the end, like one montage of all the characters coming through on a singing number at the end that wasn't even used in the film, but they were just filming all these scenes so that it could last longer. And I was just laughing at the bits that I could see. And then they played the film afterwards. And I remember thinking, I forgot about everything that had been going so shittily in my life for the last few months. And I forgot about the fact that I had to get sent home because I was having such a bad panic attack. That to me, that film is just, I will watch it again and again. Like my husband Nick can no longer watch it with me. He didn't see it and I got him into it as we were going out, and he can't watch it with me now because I laugh knowing the joke that's about to be said. I laugh in anticipation of it. Like my favorite scene is the Gene Hackman scene where he's the blind monk and he wants a friend, and he had just done The French Connection and he was like a real serious actor, but he's like, I really just want to give comedy a go. And when he's like, where are you going? I was about to make espresso. They had to do a hard cut on that scene because everybody would like piss themselves laughing, and they just had to do a hard cut because they were like, it was such a brilliant take, they couldn't redo it because he'd ad-libbed so much of it that they just had to like cut it. That's perfect. And so that's a film, if I'm ever having like a really, really bad time, I'll put it on. And like, but they have the original, they filmed in the original set that they did the 1931 Frankenstein film. So like they have the original set piece from that. They managed to get Universal to agree with them to do that. And you're talking like it was 40 years kind of in between the two films being made, but it's still a pristine set and you get that vibe. But it is the Frankenstein film, but just so funny. It's just so good. And it's, again, even like thinking about it, I could play the film in my head. If I was like on a desert island and I just probably, until I went even more insane, I just play that film in my head just to keep myself going.
That's what I love as well about horror. It can mean so many different things to so many different people, and just that feeling, because it's hard to explain sometimes. It's hard to articulate. Well, what do you mean? Like, when there's been periods in my life where I've went through like some, relative to me anyway, what I would have considered like awful times, and to be able to put on those movies or whatever and just completely forget. Yeah, like and genuinely, you know, for like you mentioned about Young Frankenstein, you know, for however long the runtime is, to just completely forget about everything that's going on.
Yeah, gone. It was brilliant.
Like, it's priceless, really.
Yeah. My dad said he saw it in the cinema, and he said he could just hear these two guys like a few rows down go, "This is shit. It's not even scary at all." Like, because you think it's like, because they did like with the original Frankenstein films, they did so many sequels, and like one of them was like Son, like you have Bride of Frankenstein, you have I think, was it Son or Child of Frankenstein, where it was there was this little boy, and I think it was the fourth Frankenstein film, it could have been the last one that Boris Karloff was actually in, and there was like a child in it, so you could think that maybe it was another long-awaited sequel, but yeah, it's definitely not a proper horror.
What about you, Grace?
Do you know, I actually put down Scream and Scream 2, and I kind of feel like I kind of put them down because I felt like I needed to, because they're my favorites, but in hindsight I actually didn't watch them over and over again because it's hard to find them on any streaming sites or anything. So until I had a physical copy, I couldn't. So I'm going to actually go with Final Destination, and in particular Final Destination 3. So I think that one, I don't know why, that one always makes me, those films are my sister Alex's favourite horrors, and I always think of them, watching them with my brother-in-law, and I think he actually brought me to the cinema to see that, just the two of us, and there's 10 years between me and my sister, so it was just this really nice thing, and it was this cool thing that the two of us, like me and my brother-in-law, went and saw this film, and I love that film, and I think as well a bit of it is because they play the Red Hot Chili Peppers in it. So I just, out of all of the Final Destinations, like I love that that whole world, but the third one, so that is the one with the roller coaster. She has the premonition that the roller coaster is about to crash. And they get off and there's a big fight, and I just thought all the characters that were in it were really good. Even like, I thought it was kind of nice the way that they, like, stereotypically bitchy girls were actually quite nice to her, and they were like, look, we're really sorry, come to the tanning salon with us and we'll all get ready together. So I think that would be my next one.
Funny you mentioned that. Actually, I was sitting here last night, and like I said, I was looking through, you know, some of the movies I have here. Yeah. And I was trying to pick out, you know, things that were maybe a little bit more obscure, just for, because I felt myself doing kind of like what you're saying about Scream, where I was, you know, I would pick something like the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre because I felt like I had to, or a Halloween movie because I felt like I had to.
Yeah.
And Final Destination 3 was actually one that I was like balancing on. I was trying to think, then I was like, but what can I really say about the movie? Why like, what could I bring up that I like about it? That opening scene with the roller coasters. So I'm a huge theme park and roller coaster guy, and to have that scene is definitely in my top 10 favorite scenes in any horror movie ever.
Yeah.
And did you still go on roller coasters after watching it?
Yep, I sure did. And you know what's even, I don't know if you want to call it sad or mental. I would when I would watch that, I would like, I wish I had an experience like that. not exactly flying off the track or anything, but just that. I wish I could have that really weird anxiety like that about that, and it's like the whole vibe of it. Like I love that movie Hellfest that came out a couple of years ago. And I think it's just more like the vibe and everything. I love Final Destination 3.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could get a roller coaster where, say, if you could get like the robotics of it to move off of, like if you could get the tracks to split a bit and then come back, like to actual, like, but to have it reinforced so it will move out. So you could do a Final Destination 3 theme park, and you could have that, you know, where it just comes off a bit and then veers back in. Something like that, like a hard little jolt.
I think as well, it kind of scared me so much because I'm genuinely terrified of pretty much everything in the world, and I'm really scared of like rides like that. And I'd love to go to the theme parks and everything, and I just would refuse to get onto anything. And then we went to Tato Park there a couple of years ago for my brother-in-law's birthday, and I think maybe it was his 30th, and the four of us went, and Warren was like, "You going to get on?" And I was like, "Right, I kind of have to." Like, it's such a big thing as well, the fact that it's this wooden roller coaster and everything. So we went on, and quite literally, I kept my eyes closed the entire time. Like, there wasn't a bit of me. But like for a while afterwards, for the whole thing, for the next year, and it was actually only it was probably a year before we went into lockdown, so it was relatively recently because we haven't done anything much since.
Yep.
But like, if anything was worrying me or if I was anxious about anything, I'd be like, I went on a roller coaster, and Warren would be like, "You were on a roller coaster this year," and I'd be like, "Yes, I was." Yeah. So it was like this big thing. But like, even when we're talking about like that roller coaster scene, I could like, my stomach was getting hot, like my heart was going more. And even when they oh god, the end scene as well, when they're on the train and she's chatting to her friends, and then the sister gets on the train, then they realize that the other survivor had been at the football game and he's on the train as well, and you're just like, oh, this it, they're all fucked. And I just love it. It's brilliant.
That's a huge franchise as well that I think doesn't really get that much recognition anymore.
No, really doesn't.
Yeah, and I think it's brilliant. I think it's one of the it's
now I think they might have like shot themselves in the foot when they did, was it the fourth one where it was the driving on the track?
Oh, you see, I love that one as well. I absolutely love that one.
I just thought that the CGI of it was just a bit OTT. It was just a bit too much for me. It's like, I think that a lot of them could be like the first one, and then like the roller coaster one. These are ones that could happen, you know, and then you can see how the trail of it, how the, you know, the ripple effect of the accident could spawn on that thing collapsing, that happening. I just thought that with that one, I was like, it just seemed, it was just a bit too much for me. It was a bit hammy almost.
Was that the one though that was 3D?
Oh yeah. So that's another thing. I hated when horror went into 3D because I almost felt like as if you had too much projectiles then.
See, I love that. I just love the cheese. And it comes into that whole comfort. Like, it's just so fun. And it's, but no, Final Destination would definitely be one of my favorite franchises. And 3 is 100% up there. So good. And there was another scene, I can't remember which one it's in. I think it's was it the most recent one? Again, scared of everything. I used to have a really big fear of physically going down escalators, and I actually couldn't get on them, so it would take me about like 5 minutes to actually psych myself up, and I couldn't haul bags or anything. And there's one scene where a girl like gets almost like eaten by an escalator, and I was like, holy Jesus, it's like they went into my mind and they're like, what can we freak Grace out with? Escalator, there you go.
It might seem too random, someone going, that would never happen to Grace, like,
oh, no, I've seen it, it's been played out in my head thousands of times.
Yeah.
You know what's funny as well? Just from you saying that, I didn't realize how many times they probably played on people's fears. Maybe not as common ones, but ones that a lot of people probably have. Like my granny refused to get on escalators, and even still is like, you know, you would swear she's trying to like walk on water. She's like wobbling.
My dad's not the best of them either.
Out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can understand her.
Because there's
Well,
another...
like, I was going to say, just like people being turned off things, I'm sure people didn't get tanning boots. People didn't get laser eye surgery.
Yeah.
The amount of things that you don't get, it's like, I've seen how that went wrong. No.
That's what I was just going to mention, the tanning bed thing. Like, that's another one where I wouldn't necessarily think about it, but then when I see it, I'm like, okay, maybe it wouldn't happen exactly like that, you know, where there's like some water spills on a thing and this happens and that happens. But it was like, well, what would happen if I tried to get out and I couldn't?
Yes.
How horrible would that be?
Oh,
Slow
and
cooking
then
to death.
when the glass breaks, and
Yeah.
you're just like, and that is to the background of the Chili's. So the whole thing, they're real, like, it's this real funky song and it's deadly, and then you're just like, oh God, they're literally being fried. And then there was the added, this is going to sound horrific, the added bonus of the glass shattering, and then like they're, you know,
I often think that if you have like a near accident now, I think it's people who grow up who are like saying their early 30s or late 20s. If you have like something like, oh, that could have been like, I could have died there. I'm like, I had a Final Destination moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just, when you're kind of thinking, going, well, if I didn't stop there, that would happen, and then that would happen, and then and you're like, oh God,
total chain of events.
It's like that meme that goes around the internet with the
logs.
Yeah, the logs in the back of that thing. That to be fair, that is something I think a lot of people probably thought about after seeing that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's just in your mind, and it's like, you know, this stuff probably could fall off that.
Yeah, you just don't know if it's just not put up correctly.
Yeah.
I was actually supposed to go to Vancouver a few years back and go to there's a theme park there called Playland, and that's where that roller coaster is. It was called the Corkscrew, but they closed down the roller coaster and got rid of it in 2018, I think it was.
You gotta wonder why.
I know, right? That makes me think then, because there was a whole story, I think, around the safety of it and stuff like that. But that was in a couple of other things as well. That was in an episode or two of Smallville, and I think it was in Diary of a Wimpy Kid, or something like that. And the reason they used that one specifically was because of the way it was laid out. Apparently, it looked really good for shooting it, whatever way it was shaped and stuff, and then it was in Vancouver, so they get all sorts of tax breaks for filming and different things like that. So the next movie I picked out, so this is one that I've yet to have anybody either say that they know what it is or that they will in any way agree with me that it's good.
Okay.
It's a movie that came out in 2001 called Soul Survivors. Have either of you guys ever heard of it?
I'm like getting on my phone going, let's see.
Yeah.
So it was directed by Stephen Carpenter. It has Melissa Sage Miller, Wes Bentley, from another favourite comfort movie of mine, P2, and Casey Affleck is in it. And the chick from Wrong Turn.
Eliza Dushku?
Yeah, she's in it as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I very much recognise the cover.
Yeah, I saw, right, here's a funny story. Well, I was thinking about this last night and I was just jotting down some notes and of what I wanted to say, because a lot of times I just related to one experience. And I was like, I want to talk about the film aside from just nostalgia for it. And just in the process of that, I was looking through and I was like, I want to pull out the DVD actually. Can't find the DVD. So I'm like, wait a second. There's no way that I don't have this movie anymore.
Yeah.
So I go on eBay and I spent like 25 quid buying there was like a killer cut, which was a cut of the movie I don't think I've ever seen in its entirety. So I just went and bought that yesterday.
I think I've seen this film. Sorry, I'm just looking at it on IMDb going, this is like really familiar. And I think it was just the image of it was like, yeah, I'm going to get this. I'm going to give it a watch.
Yeah, so...
Am I right in saying that she's actually Eliza Dushku isn't in it that much?
She's in the car with them.
Else.
Yeah, she's not. She kind of shows up here and there. I'd say if you were to total how long she's actually in it, it's very little.
Yeah, I watched something recently that they were like, it was a bit, the cover was a bit of a scam because you were like, oh, she's going to be the main person. Then it was kind of like,
she's the Drew Barrymore of Scream.
Okay, cool.
So
yeah, I don't think I've seen it, but I do know. Yeah.
The premise for the whole movie, I'll just read what they had on IMDb. So, after barely surviving an auto accident which killed her boyfriend, a college student recovers only to eventually find herself in a sort of limbo state between the living and the spirit world, in which the ghosts of the afterlife want to collect her, or even worse, use her body in its transition state to enter our world. So, this movie, I'm not really sure. I remember at the time we had a shop in Wexford called BPM, and it was like one of the first places that had DVDs at the time, and it were like one of those things where it was like £40 or whatever it was at the time. And I remember, I don't know why, but the cover of this, for some reason, I was like, I want it. And every week I'd go downtown with my grandparents and it was like, I want it. We're like, that is a lot of money for just that, and you don't even know what it is, and you're too young to look at it or whatever.
Yeah.
Because they just assumed everything that had a scary cover was like, no way.
Yeah.
So eventually I convinced them to. And a lot of why I watched this was because for a while it was one of the only movies I had on DVD. So it was like in my mind, it was like this prized possession. I was like, wow, this amazing DVD thing that has movies on it. And I would watch it every Friday. Like every single Friday in its entirety without fail. For years. This went on.
Yeah.
And then I just like forgot about it. I grew up and I just forgot about the movie. And then a couple of years back, I don't know, I seen a poster for it or something. And like, this is one that I have like severe nostalgia for. And I don't know what it is exactly, but like more than probably any other horror film.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I guess, a shittier version of like a mix between the 60s Carnival of Souls and Jacob's Ladder, maybe.
Okay.
But I think it, from some of the stuff I'd written down, I feel like it had the same fate as something like Blair Witch 2, with cuts and edits and different things. The whole story of the movie is actually quite deep, but apparently the studio, I think the producers, wanted it repackaged. They didn't want... so it was rated R originally when it was shot. There was a lot of... I don't want to say gore, but there was a lot more violence in it. There was a lot more raw, and I think the producers sat down and went, nope, we want PG-13 and it needs to be a teenage movie. It's coming out around Halloween. We need to sell it to teenagers. So like, if you look at the trailers and stuff, it's very like I Know What You Did Last Summer kind of a vibe. Yeah. But when you watch the movie, you're like, wait, what? Because
this isn't.
Yeah, now there is scenes... It's so, and maybe that was kind of what used to intrigue me. It's so weird because it goes from like being like a movie with a lot of thought behind it, I think, as to what's actually going on, and then it goes from that to like some weird slasher where you've got these guys like with masks and they're like chasing the characters, and it just seems a bit muddled up. Apparently, the rated R cut is much better. Which I've yet to see all in its. I've seen the scenes, but I haven't actually seen them all together. But for me, that's one that like, and I always tell people about it, and I kind of feel bad recommending it because I know it's probably absolutely shite. But for me, for some reason,
it holds that part of your life.
I just like literally obsessed with it. There's a scene, even the probably some of the bad stuff, like the slasher kind of aspects of it. There's a scene where she wakes up in a bathtub and her kidney has been taken out. And there's a really cool scene with that. There's scenes where she's being followed by this guy, and he wears, I want to say it's a pair of tights on his head, which for some reason, right? And I always laugh at that. And then I look at somebody with a pair of tights over their head and go, that's actually terrifying.
Yeah,
that's really horrible.
I wouldn't want to see that coming towards me.
Terrifying looking. There's a scene with a rave, which is really well done. And then there's another scene where she keeps having these weird, and you kind of don't know whether she's in like a dream state or she's alive or dead or what's going on with her.
Yeah.
She has another dream or like I don't know what you want to call it, a vision where she wakes up in some kind of hospital, and it's like your usual, and it's something that I used to be actually really afraid of. You know, kind of the scene where you're being pushed down a corridor in a hospital and you've got all these nurses and doctors over you and the bright lights, and there's a lot of commotion, and then you're being strapped to a bed and the doctor's like, no, it's all good, and there's needles, but you know there's something going on. There's a scene kind of like that, and like they drill into the side of her head, and I remember always like having weird nightmares about that being me. Yeah. Or like going into hospital for something, but then waking up like tied to the bed, and like the doctor is like crazy and the nurses are crazy.
Yeah. I can tell you in Ireland that won't happen, because from what I've seen from people with operations, you're made to walk to a theatre. You don't get a wheelchair really. If you can walk, only because my mom was getting an operation years ago, and they put you out in a room just outside of theatre. They give you your anesthesia there. So they're like, no, if you can walk, we're going to save the bed. No, save the porter. No, just walk down. And then I remember walking my mom to theatre, and I was like, this is bizarre. So I can tell you, for your own sake, that shouldn't happen to you. Now, you might wake up and you're strapped to a bed, not going to lie, that could also happen to you. But you won't have that going through. I think that's a very American thing. It's brilliant, like the way you see it. It's also terrifying, but that shouldn't happen to us in real life. So I don't know whether I've made that better or worse.
Yeah, right. Though it is a very, I think, American thing, and I'm sure there's probably stories of stuff like that happening or whatever. But it was always one of those things that stuck in my mind, and I didn't really realize, I don't think at the time, that I was afraid of that or had nightmares about stuff like that. Until
it's like you lose all control. Yeah. Someone else has like got control of your body.
And then like when I got older, then I thought about it a lot, and I was like, do you remember that actually? I used to have these really vivid nightmares where I would be like convinced that I was in. And if you watch that movie, it's this weird going between like what's reality and what's not, or am I when I wake up from the dream, is that real, or is the dream real and then I used to kind of feel like that because I was younger at the time. I used to kind of be like, I don't even know what's like.
Am I awake now?
Yeah. Yeah. And it used to really fuck with me. And that movie is always, and like it really has your like late 90s, early 2000s feel. That's another thing I love about it. It has a certain look and feel.
The clothes, the makeup, the hairstyles, everything.
Even the music, like the soundtrack, everything is exactly. Yeah.
And I think that was such a good time for her.
Yeah.
It was a real fun time.
Yeah, late 90s, early 2000s. And I'm talking like no later than 2003, 4 to push. It was a beautiful little time. It's its own little bubble.
Yeah, it definitely is. Do either of you guys have another one?
My next one, it's more of a subgenre. I love anything in kind of open water or with like sharks, and those ones that people turn around and go, oh my God, no, they are terrible. Like absolute tripe. So like the likes of like Adrift and Open Water. And I'm not even talking like Jaws, like proper legit kind of like horror movies that you would think of when you're thinking about water, but like the 43 meters down, and then the second one. But I watched one recently called The Reef, and it's an Australian movie. It's 2010. So their yacht capsizes, and the 5 friends realize that the ship is sinking, but swimming is going to be a little bit difficult because there is nearby shark. And I think we actually spoke about this before, Eimear, with a couple of our friends. And it's mad, where Eimear was discussing how she always kind of goes into a room thinking, how does she get out? I kind of start watching a horror movie in about 10 minutes and I'm like, oh, I'd be dead by now. So either by the killer's hands or just taking myself out of the situation. So I was like trying to figure out how I would not survive in that film.
How quick could you go?
Yeah, I was like, what would be the way? And I remember Grace being like, our other friend is called Grace, and she was like, you would literally hit your head enough that you would pass out, so then you wouldn't notice anything. And I was like, yeah, that would be it. And then I'd like just peacefully drown or something like that, and it would be fine. It'd be fine. And she was like, so then all of the blood from your head is now attracting these white sharks to us.
Kills us all, really.
Yes, but I wouldn't be aware, so it would be fine.
For you.
For me, yeah, it would be absolutely fine. But yeah, that kind of like those massive open, like, and it's funny because they do it so you're either in this massive open ocean where anything could be coming for you, or you're in this tiny little cage or a little cave, and you're in this enclosed space, but there's like this vast amount of like sea around you. And it's just that terrifying thing of you don't know what's coming to you. You also don't know what's in the ocean because it hasn't been properly like, explored. And yeah, that vastness makes me feel very uneasy. So yeah, any kind of shit shark movie or shit sea movie.
There's a film that was out, I think, early this year, late last year, with Kristen Stewart, and it's basically an underwater one where they basically got Cthulhu in the water. It's sci-fi, it's Lovecraftian, and it's very good. I have to say, I surprisingly liked it. I think you might like that, Grace. Name of it has gone right out of my head, but if you look up for Kristen Stewart, water film, it's good.
There was actually I have a new like mini episode thing I'm working on where I try and find like the real life inspiration behind horror films.
Oh, brilliant.
And Open Water was one that I found.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't realize like that story. I won't go through the whole thing, but just the story of it was a husband and wife, I think, and they had went out to sea.
Scuba diving.
Yeah. And like just listening to the story of the boat leaves and they're just left there.
Christ, could you imagine?
My God, that
and
is
really
terrifying.
I'm kind of like in that thing, like in another horror movie, right? Okay, obviously, yeah, like there's a killer there. There's obviously like you could be killed any second, but there's places you can run, there's places you can hide. Like if you're in the middle of the ocean, like you can't swim somewhere, like there's no land around you, like,
and they don't have any flotation devices.
Like it really is that like hopelessness and that bleak, which actually has got me thinking now. I'm like, oh, that's a bit strange, that I do find that so comforting, those kind of movies. But there is such a bleakness and a helplessness like that, the way you're saying, Aaron, like when it just sailed away and there's nothing. And
there's a lot of when I went looking into that story, there's a lot of stuff. I don't know if I believe any of it, but I guess it's kind of intriguing and interesting when you look at these things. You know, they looked at their diaries and stuff back home, and there was a lot of stuff about the husband talking about being suicidal, and
was there financial difficulties or something?
Yeah, and they had issues, and there was a lot of stuff that came out there afterwards. There's a lot of theories on what actually happened.
Right.
Because it was tragic. It was a buddy system, and because they went down together, and I think they weren't meant to be there. They were like a last minute addition, so they weren't really on the roster. And because everyone was like, "Oh, is your partner with you?" and everyone was like, "Yeah," and the buddy system failed them because they were still underwater. They took too long.
Yeah. No.
Oh.
And like even so apparently like the next day a different company or whatever took a boat out to the exact same place. And when they done the head count coming back, they had 2 extra people.
Oh.
And they were 2 Americans. The entire boat was it was a tour group from Italy, so everybody on the boat was Italian. And the captain said, no, I had 2 Americans, a man and woman. Now, again, I don't know, like sometimes people see these things.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know. There's I didn't realize how many different stories and different things came out afterwards.
Yeah.
About that they were having severe trouble in their marriage and stuff going on that trip.
I think I might have seen a documentary, but like just once. But I remember just even watching the film, I just remember thinking, oh, I couldn't, like you're just, when you kind of know how it's going to go for them, and you're just like, it's a matter of waiting for the time. You're like, oh.
And like, as well, I actually thought that movie was done quite well. Like, it's a hard thing to just do the majority of a movie with two people.
Yeah.
With nothing around them. And I liked it. It wasn't kind of one of those ones that was really drawn out and just, now I know that they tend to be the type of movies that people are just like, absolutely not. But that tends to be the type of movie I like.
What's the one where is it a group of people on some kind of a yacht or a sailboat, and they jump off, but they can't get back up into the boat? There's no ladder down or whatever. There's definitely more than one, or there's definitely more than two characters in it.
Yeah, everybody who was on the boat jumped off. And because they jumped off, no one did a ladder or something.
Yeah, something like that.
That's the early 2000s as well.
Yeah. And I only watched this recently as well, and I just remember it was another one of those movies I watched going like, Jesus, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah, you see, in that case, I actually don't see anything that could help.
Yeah, like what do I do?
Yeah. Like, and even when you do end up finding that piece of land, right? Like, what's the likelihood?
Oh, it's open water too.
Is it?
Yeah, it's called open water too, adrift. They fail to lower the ladder into the boat, and they find themselves stranded in the surrounding waters.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that.
No, neither. I didn't know it had a sequel. I didn't know when I watched it that it was. But I doubt that that's based off of a true story.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Huh. That's it. Now, it's not great, but it was done well enough that I was like, I guess the situation felt quite believable. It was like, I could see how that could happen. You're all partying and drinking on a boat, and then you jump off.
They leave their baby on the boat as well.
Yeah, and then I think it's after a little while, then somebody goes to get back up to get something or something. They're like, where's the ladder? And everyone's like, what? And it's like, oh shit. And the way, like, obviously a boat is shaped, there's no way for them to, there's nothing to grab, you can't get up, and it's like high up.
Oh god,
I honestly don't know what I would do. Like,
those ones just fill me with dread, and like I feel uncomfortable, but I'm like, I love it.
Yeah, same. And I love, and it's like what you said earlier, Eimear, it's like I'm sitting there kind of going, okay, what would I do? I would I would do it, and like
I the shoulders of someone, or
I become
some sort of a ladder.
I become MacGyver all of a sudden, and I'm like, right, okay, I would take my shorts off and make them into a gun, and I would do this and I would do that, and like stupid things like that are never going to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm just like trying to figure out how long it takes for one person to drown themselves.
Grace is like bashing her head off the side of the yacht. We're like, we're not dead yet.
I'm like, bye.
And you know what? That's the worst part. Like if you were in a situation like that, right? Let's say there's no sharks or anything. It's like, how am I going to die out here? Because
would you wait until you were so tired you couldn't keep yourself afloat and then you drown?
Yeah, like what what do you do? Like, do you just stay in one spot? Do you stay by the boat? Do you attempt to try and swim somewhere?
Would you try and just float and see where it takes you?
Yeah, like that's actually a fear, because I have a huge fear of the ocean, and I don't mind flying, but when I think about like when I go back and forth to New York, when I know I'm like over the middle of the ocean, all of a sudden I don't like flying anymore.
Yeah.
And I always have this fear. I've often thought
that on a plane when you're going over a body of water. Yeah.
And like this fear of, I think I'd freak out if I was, trapped in the ocean or whatever, but I'd freak out even more at the idea of being stuck in that in bad weather. I don't know why, but I watched Perfect Storm again recently.
Oh, yeah.
And just like the idea of like when the guy goes flying off the back of the boat and they jump in to save him, I'm like, fuck that. I wouldn't jump in that like when there's a storm and all. No way. I'd be terrified to get in the water anyway.
Be like, I'll light a candle for you.
It's just like, sorry. He's gone.
R.I.P.
Yeah, just cut the line and just, I'm sorry, you're dead. Like,
yeah.
I'll send some money to your now widow.
I I can't remember whose movie that was, that last one.
That was Grace's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to go with, for a long time, I was going to go with Bram Stoker's Dracula, because to me, that is the most romantic horror film I'd ever come across. But I feel like, even to myself personally, I have spoken about that film in one way, shape or another in the last 6 months to its own death. So I decided to last minute just make a change. And I've gone with the 1997 sci-fi film Event Horizon, because it was like when I moved into my apartment 5 or 6 years ago, before we moved house now. But like, I remember that was one of the earliest films I saw by myself in the apartment. And I remember thinking, yeah, this is great.
I'm an adult.
Yeah, and I'm going to watch an old sci-fi horror and I'm going to have a blast. And I did. I freaking loved that film. I'd seen it like once or twice before, but I just remember thinking, it was a great film of adulting to watch that on a day off. So the premise of that is it's a rescue crew investigate a spaceship that's disappeared into a black hole and has now returned with someone or something new on board. And I love the premise of it, like that it's meant to have basically the entry into hell on that spaceship, on the craft. And Sam Neill, like Lawrence Fishburne, I think those two, they're just absolutely brilliant in the film. And I love sci-fi horror. Like that and The Thing would be my two favorite sci-fi horrors. And Alien and it just keeps on going. But no, with Event Horizon, I think because I also love like demon stuff and possession and what could happen to you in hell, like with the torture scene. Like there was so much that came off the back of that film. Like there's the CGI in it is shocking even for 1997. But what happened was, of course, 97 Titanic was coming out, so the editing crew and the effects crew were basically, instead of being given 6 months, were given 6 weeks to get all the special effects done for the film, which is why like there's, I think, like liquid being shown passing through the spacecraft and it looks awful. But all they were like, if we had been given more time, it would have been more polished, could have looked a lot better. Then there was the director's cut of it, which I think would have given it like a more R rating. They had more of the hell scene where the first crew were tortured, but that ended up in a salt mine in somewhere in Eastern Europe. Why they brought it there, why they thought a salt mine would keep it safe, but it destroyed the film. So the only version of the director's cut is destroyed, and all you have are like their notes and the drawings of what it would have looked like, which is such a shame, because to me, in my warped mind, that was my favorite part, seeing the flashbacks to the crew being tortured, and when he's trying to say, liberate us from this evil or something. But it's just such a good film. It doesn't dip, it doesn't get boring, it just keeps on going, and Sam Neill in it is brilliant. So to me, it brings me back to a time when I'm like stepping out by myself, doing that, watching a film, and I'm like, yeah, okay, it's not so scary to be living out without being in your family home. I can do this.
Yeah.
That I was just looking up there, Scream Factory have a new release of that came out recently.
Oh.
And it has 4K scan of the original camera negative. There is, I want to say 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. There's probably about 20 to 25 special features on it.
Nice. I'm so going to get that.
All new audio commentaries with everybody. A making of 5-part documentary, a 4-part look at the filming of Event Horizon. Secret deleted and extended scenes with director's commentary, the unseen Event Horizon, the unfilmed rescue scenes, and conceptual art with director commentary. There's like so much stuff on it.
Yeah, because like that, it all got lost. So they just have what they have. And then because Titanic came out like weeks after it got released, it just got forgotten about. And it's just such a shame.
There's Did you ever see the theory that Event Horizon and Hellraiser are in the same universe?
No, but I would see where that would come from.
There's I can't remember the name of the YouTube channel, but if you're ever looking for something to just like stick on and kind of have in the background and listen to, I'll find the link and I'll send it to you. But this guy does all these he goes really in depth as to how it's not just like, oh yeah, it is because hell, and sure he's in hell or whatever. He like ties it all together, and like it made. I was like, I wonder, is that actually a thing? But I think they came out and said like, no, it was never the intention.
He's so believable with his theories.
Like it sounded, everything made sense to me. I was like, wow, I wonder, was that actually going to be a thing then? But apparently it's not. But it is. That's another like super underrated movie that I don't feel gets enough.
Yeah. And I think it's like not a lot of people, like people who like sci-fi might not like horror, and people who like horror might not like sci-fi. So I feel like some sci-fi horror films can fly under the radar. Like you've got people who might be like, oh, well, I'll watch Alien, but I won't watch any other sci-fi horror films. So you kind of like, I think I love films in space of any kind of genre as well. So I just love watching them. It's like it's the unknown, and it's kind of the same theory of with the water, with open water. Like it's uncharted territory. You don't know what's out there. And I feel like for horror films, there's limitless potential for what you could be putting into them.
Yeah.
But I like how this film, they went through a black hole. Like they went so far out and came back, but they had gotten hell, like our religious version of hell in space. So I thought that was pretty cool.
My final one is another one that I'm not sure if many people have seen. It doesn't really get talked about at all. It's a Tobe Hooper movie that came out in 2003 or 2004, I'm not sure. It's a remake of Toolbox Murders.
I've heard of it. I don't know if I've ever seen it, because the amount of like that with early 2000s, I went through rental feast of films. So I don't know. So what's it?
This is one of those movies that
I haven't.
The cover used to just, I don't even want to say scare me, but just kind of creep me out. There was a face of the killer on the cover. And it's funny because I listened to
Is it that?
I was just saying, I'm looking at it now.
No,
that's not even it.
Tobe Hooper had come out and said, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
It's funny because I think when you watch the movie, you don't actually see him till like right near the end. And that was apparently the intention, was to keep it kind of hidden. So then the reveal would be way more... now, to be honest with you, the reveal is still kind of unsettling anyway, but he always had a problem with the fact that they put the face on the cover, considering that the whole movie... Kind
of like with Kevin Spacey in Seven, how he's not in the... he's not even in any of the credits.
And it's like... I get it, I suppose, from a marketing standpoint. You need to be able to sell the movie, and that was probably still the time like DVD was quite fresh, and you were still selling movies based on artwork, so of course you're going to put the cool looking horrible killer on the cover.
Yes.
But
as a hook to get people.
Yeah, because like, I mean, I don't know how many movies over the years I rented or bought just based off of artwork. I still even do it sometimes.
100%.
It's as that phrase goes, you're judging a book by its cover. You're doing the same with DVDs, with everything.
Definitely.
Because you look at the cover and then you flip it to the back, you'll read the little blurb on the back. And if that catches you, it's like, yeah, okay, I'll just rent this, whatever.
Yeah.
Mine made up. So the movie is centered around a historic Hollywood hotel that houses a supernatural evil. It's been subdued for decades, but when renovations start, a series of murders begin to take place. So it's set in a place called the Lussman Arms. It's a hotel. A lot of people think it was taken off the basis of something like the Hotel Cecil or whatever. It's kind of in a seedy part of town, and they're trying to renovate it to kind of bring it back, I guess. It's one of those places, it's not like a straight up hotel, like there's people living there, and so it is kind of very
as well.
Yeah, it's kind of very like the Cecil Hotel. But when the movie starts off, all this weird stuff you kind of start to hear about, workmen going missing, strange noises all night even when they're finished work, and tenants going missing, and just the building in general is quite creepy and dark and dingy. And then you have the building manager or whatever. He seems to be real sketchy about what's going on. Which is funny, actually, because that documentary that came out recently on Netflix about the Cecil Hotel,
Yeah.
I had seen
Yeah.
online a lot of people were commenting on the hotel manager
She,
Oh yeah.
and how she seems so chill
Bananas.
about a lot of the stuff.
yeah, she was. I used to be a manager in a hotel.
So Grace can relate to the murderers.
I get it. I get it.
But yeah, there's a lot of different like strange like oddball characters, and it does remind me in a way, I guess, of Texas Chainsaw that way. There's like these characters that like probably weren't intended to be a big thing, but for anyone who's seen this movie, like they'll always stick out to you.
Yeah.
But this was something I didn't know until yesterday. So apparently the story is connected to a story of someone called Jack Parsons. He was an occultist and Crowley devotee who founded the Jet Propulsion Lab. It is said that Parsons claimed to have created a homunculus, an artificial human being. So there is a genuine connection with LA's strange relationship with occultism here. Blah, blah, blah. He blew himself up in an experiment.
Ooh.
Yeah, so apparently, I didn't actually I never tied this in with the movie. Apparently there's a way deeper story behind it. I never got it. I thought the movie was just a straight slasher.
Yeah.
I didn't realise there's a whole occult supernatural aspect that was kind of glossed over. There is a whole story about, I think halfway through, maybe a little bit more, one of the production companies closed down, and the movie just had to stop filming, and then they had to cut together whatever they had and make a movie.
Okay.
Now, I don't know, Toby Hooper had come out after that and said that never happened. But it does, when you look at it, there's points where you're like, like it felt like there was a nice pace, and then all of a sudden it just speeds up.
Yeah.
And it's like over and done. But yeah, it's a fun one. Like the killer or murder, whatever you want to call him, is fun. If you read into some of the intended backstory, I think it makes it a little bit more interesting as well. And it was made on less than $1 million, which I was very
hard to get even in the early 2000s.
Which I was very surprised by. You know, it was one of those things that came out around the time where, like, he had been on a fairly big decline for a long time there. A lot of his movies had flopped. He had made that movie Crocodile. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just kind of like, and it was one of those things I don't think it got enough of a push.
Yeah.
I think it's one of his better movies, to be honest. I would put it right up there with Texas Chainsaw.
Oh, I'm definitely going to have to check that out.
Yeah.
Like, even when it came out at the time, I know Bloody Disgusting had said, Toolbox is a strong film likely to boost Tobe Hooper back into the top rung of horror directors along the names of Craven, Carpenter and Romero. Go see a master of horror doing his thing. You will not be disappointed. Like, I genuinely, it's one of those things that's like so overlooked. I have no idea how I originally came across it. I think it was something like you're walking through the horror section in Extravision, and I always, on the very bottom shelf, I would always see that face and be like, what is that?
Yeah.
And it always seemed to be there. And like every week I'd go in, I'd look at it and be like, will I? And then eventually I was like, look, I'm just going to get this and see what it's about. But the killer in it, there's a scene, it doesn't really give away too much, but there's a scene where she's found all these like weird tunnels, and there's a lot more to the building than she thought.
Yeah.
And she's going down this kind of windy, narrow stairs. And it feels really claustrophobic and dark and dingy, but there's a part then where something happens. I won't say what it is, but she's going back up to get away from whatever noise. And she looks down, and you see the killer down at the bottom, and he's wearing a balaclava. And he rips the balaclava off, and he's like screaming in pain.
Ooh.
There's a whole story. You find it out when you watch the movie. Like he's kind of in pain.
Yeah.
And he looks up at the camera, like the camera's looking down between all these stairs. And like he looks up, and just the visual of his face, and she hides, and she's like holding her mouth, you know, stop her breathing or whatever. And when she looks back down, everything goes quiet for a second, and when she looks back down, he's climbing up the...
Oh, no.
I have to say, it's one of the scariest visuals that I
Yeah.
remember seeing. And I think because the film feels so gritty, and like it's not your usual, you know, $40 million. I'm not a huge fan of some of the Insidious movies, but it doesn't look, like so Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's very gritty. It's very kind of has a little bit of a like snuff vibe off it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made it. Sherry Moon Zombie is actually in it as well, which is something that I didn't realize. Yeah, it was
weird to see her in a film not done by Rob Zombie. Then.
So she done it as a favor, I think, because Toby Hooper and Rob were friends, and I think it's the only movie that she acted in that's not directed by him, and it's the last time she was referred to as Sherry Moon. I think it was like right before they got married or something.
Oh wow!
Ah.
But that's definitely one I would always recommend to people to check out as just
Yeah,
like
I'm
a
definitely
blind.
putting that on. Even that scene, your description of that.
Yeah, I hate people crawling.
Oh, it's horrible, and his face is so disgusting. Like when you see it on the cover, it's like okay, it's scary, it's weird looking. When you see it in the movie, it's like it's 100 times worse. There is a sequel, I think, that came out like in 2013. Now I don't think it was. I've never seen it, but I don't think it was great.
Sometimes they can just miss that completely.
Yeah, and especially like it came out in 2004, and they waited however many years.
They waited
to
quite
go.
a while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. Like maybe somebody got the license or whatever for it and tried to cash in on it, but not. For
There's
me.
actually a third one as well.
Oh, is there? Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
When did that come out?
When did it come out? I can't see, but there's a lot of very good-looking girls on the front, and the tagline is "Revenge never looked so good."
Oh god.
Oh, right. Okay, so it's also known as Coffin Baby, which is kind of funny because the
Sorry, it's just a weird title.
yeah, because I think part of the intended backstory was he was like a coffin Bert.
Oh.
So I think that might have been something that was implied at one point in the original or in.
Oh.
So that's, I guess, kind of a cool tie-in, but yeah.
And actually, looking at it here, the actress Angela Betty's, is it? But she kind of, I can imagine her kind of in the scenes. In a weird way, she kind of she's a perfect kind of horror actress because she makes me feel uncomfortable because I just imagine that what's going to happen is going to be uncomfortable.
She's actually in quite a few things. I remember seeing her in it was one of the first 3D horror films I saw in the cinema. It was a movie called Scar. Came out in 2007. Not a great movie. I think I was just sold on the fact that it was 3D at the time, and I felt like it was. I don't even like 3D, but I just got sold on the gimmick, I think.
Yes. Yeah. And it was such a big thing for a short time. It was so huge. She was in a remake of Carrie as well. Kind of a made-for-TV movie, Carrie.
Yeah, she's kind of one of those actresses. Like every now and again, you might see something and go, "Oh yeah, her. I've seen her." But like you don't really know.
Yeah.
She's just kind of like that mid-range actress.
Yeah.
I know she was in Bless the Child as well, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
She's just not getting her big break.
Yeah, I don't think it's coming now. Well, that's my lot. It's one of them things, and I'm sure we all probably could, like, I could talk about, comfort horror movies or movies that I have nostalgia for hours. Like the list could probably be 100.
Yeah.
Eimear had actually texted me and she was like, what do we do? I was like, Aaron said 3, do 3.
Because originally I was just going to say just comfort horror, and then I was like, I'm going to have like a novel by the time I'm done with that, because I'll keep going, oh yeah, I need to put that in. Oh yeah, I need to put this in. Oh yeah, but what about that?
Because I think as well, when you're into horror and you're so into it and it is that comfort thing, you've comfort scenes from horrors. Like there's scenes in particular movies, like I'll always think of the kind of that scene where in Urban Legends, she's in the car, she's singing the song and she's on the road, it's really dark. And then the opening scene of Scream 2. Those two scenes are such comfort scenes for me. And they're like iconic. And you're like, yeah, it's not even a full movie. You could go, oh, that scene in that movie just brings back so much.
Like I have that about Halloween Resurrection. I've started to appreciate it a little bit more in recent years, just from the point of like they did try and innovate and do something different.
Oh, they really did.
Yeah.
It didn't work out, I don't think, but that opening scene with the where we see Laurie and she's in that hospital and just the whole vibe of that, I fucking love that scene.
Yeah. I have a lot of love for that movie. I really do. And Halloween H2O. Yeah.
It's one of those things, like, and like you said, I never really thought of it like that, but there is times where I probably like certain parts of the movie and maybe not the whole thing.
And someone gave Michael Myers a proper fight, like, so the karate scene, like, come on.
I know, yeah. I actually bought a Dangertainment t-shirt from Fright Rags there a while back.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I just couldn't help myself. I was like...
Oh, to me, he made the whole film. When I rewatched it, I was like, I don't know why I haven't rewatched this sooner. He's so funny and he's brilliant.
Maybe because like the movie was a critical failure or whatever, but I feel like that never really got enough recognition for, like, that was out there. Like that came out in 2002. That storyline and plot was so out there.
Yeah.
Like I'm surprised that nobody said, like, Jesus, they really went out on a limb with this one.
Definitely.
I haven't seen the likes of that then. The next one I think I saw was Dead Set in, I think, 2004, and that was the Big Brother zombie thing. Like, and again, that didn't take off. That kind of reality movie horror, that was very slow to take. And I don't think it ever really became as big as it could have been.
No.
Maybe it's because reality TV is its own horror.
You might be onto something with that one. Okay, so I guess before we wrap it up then, is there any notable mentions or anything that jumps out to either of you that we haven't talked about that you would recommend people listening to check out?
I think ones that nearly came onto my list, I suppose, would have been Urban Legends.
Yes.
The Omen for me. Again, it's another family favourite. And it just takes me back to those. It's going to sound weird with childhood like memories of watching. And because I grew up beside a church, I always thought that on a stormy night, the top of the steeple would come off and
actually, in particular, the church that you grew up beside is very Omen-esque.
It is. Yeah. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would
beautiful
say
in its own way.
Probably Cry Wolf, maybe, is another one. A lot of people haven't seen it. Kind of enjoy it. The Midnight Meat Train.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
I haven't seen that.
I think you'll enjoy that.
Okay.
That was one of those ones again where it was like the Horror Channel or Channel 4 or something late at night, just randomly came across it, and at the end I was like, wow, how have I never seen that?
Is that the Vinny Jones? Yes, I did see that. Yeah, that was like, I was like, what is he doing on this? And then I was like, he's actually terrifying.
That was actually I was very surprised with that. Very surprised. There are probably another two that I would
there's actually two, right? One is just for how fun it is, and it, like anyone who has listened to us, and I've said it before, my taste in horror is kind of like those cheesy ones that people usually would be like, no.
Yeah.
With the Funhouse Massacre, I think it's on Netflix. It's 2015. It's ridiculous. Robert Englund's in it, but it's just great crack.
Yeah.
It actually is really good crack. And then The Perfect Getaway. It's probably more of a thriller kind of horror.
I think that's on Shudder, isn't it?
It's on Shudder.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I loved that film. And I don't say too much about it because it's one of those films that I don't like to ruin on somebody because I loved it so much. And again, it has one of that thing you do, alum in it.
Yeah.
So I will forever love it. But that film, 100%, go and watch.
That I actually saw that in the cinema, I think, and I don't think I've seen it since.
Yeah.
But like, there's so many movies out there. Like, I love the House of Wax remake.
Yeah, I love that one. Yeah.
2001 Maniacs is another one I love. It's just like, it's terrible, but it's like just fun to watch.
Yeah.
There's so many, like, I mean, you could go on and on and on. And you know what I've noticed in recent years? It's nice to see movies that maybe didn't, like I said, I done an interview yesterday with Adam Robitel, and he done The Taking of Deborah Logan. And it was interesting to hear him, you know, he told a story about how all that came about, and he said that he basically put himself into debt to get the movie made. Some of the stuff he had written was optioned by Del Toro, and nothing seemed to be going anywhere fast enough, and he wanted to get cracking, so he decided to make the movie himself. And put himself into debt, and you know, they had a test screening and it scored really bad and it was terrible and everyone hated it and it was crap. And you know, the movie kind of came out and didn't really do anything, and he said he was just like, I can't believe that, you know, I've spent all this time and I'm a complete failure. And then Netflix got a hold of it, and in the first weekend 1 million people had watched it.
Yeah.
And it's nice now. I know that's a newer movie, but it's nice to even, like, I like when I see these streaming platforms, you know, bring up even older movies and some of the stuff we've talked about that's probably, you know, it's not a AAA title, but lots of people get exposed to it, and it kind of, maybe it might be 20 years old, but it gets its little...
deserving. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if there's one good thing to come out of this pandemic, it's that a lot of films that were shelved, that were never meant to see the light of day, are being released now, and they're coming out on like streaming platforms and stuff like that. So all these beauties that for some reason or another that the production company were just like, no, do you know, in the end, we're just not going to release that. We all get a chance to see.
Yeah.
And that's even, have either of you guys seen The Empty Man?
No.
So that came out, I think, the tail end of last year, but it was right around the time I want to say all the movie theaters were closing down again in the States. So it had like a really shitty release and nobody saw it.
Yeah.
And but recently, there's a guy on YouTube, is it Chris Stuckman or something like that? He does all movie reviews.
Okay.
He reviewed it. Now he has like a couple of million followers. This thing went super viral, and now the movie, like, everybody's going crazy over it. And like, I seen it was all over, you know, TikTok, and it was all over this and it was all over that, and there was memes about it. And I'm supposed to sit down and talk to the director next week, but even he was saying to me, he was like, I thought, not that it was a complete failure, but I just thought that the movie was, it was gone, like, and
it had its day.
But he was like, the response now, because of streaming platforms and these different things, it's given it a second wind.
Yeah.
And could potentially save it.
And even outside of streaming platforms, it's amazing, because another movie that seemed to have gone kind of viral from like TikTok was Megan is Missing recently. And like, that was a movie that was released how many years ago? Yeah. And like, people genuinely thought that this was happening at the moment and this was real. And like, I remember actually seeing a video by the director who had to make a video for TikTok to be like, it's okay. It's not real. And if you haven't seen this, be careful what you're going into. And it's mad how much kind of like those social media platforms are bringing these movies up again. Which is very interesting.
TikTok has definitely been one that I've noticed it happens a lot on. Maybe it's to do with the way they push their content or whatever. But I see, you know, a lot of these channels where they go, you know, a crazy movie you've never seen and whatever, and it's a movie, and then like this thing gets like, you know, 20, 30 million views, and it has millions of likes, and it just takes off. Like, it's crazy. It's like free marketing, really. Yeah, it really is, though. It massively is. And it's nice that people will get a chance now, you know, some of those smaller movies or movies that we all probably love that maybe saw the light of day but didn't really do anything. It's like Jennifer's Body. I have such a love for Jennifer's Body. And then when you actually, I watched an interview between Diablo Cody and Megan Fox, and Diablo Cody was saying that she actually went to counselling after Jennifer's Body because she had such, like, she was obviously coming down off the
the high of this Oscar win. And then for this movie that was just a labor of love to have gotten such bad reviews, and genuinely I do feel it was down to the marketing and stuff like that, and they've all said it. And yeah, obviously it's some people just don't like it because it's not going to be everybody's thing, but it's amazing how that again has gotten a new, it's now a cult thing, and on TikTok you'll see girls who are like fashioning themselves as Jennifer, and it's really cool.
It's strange as well how, you know, I don't think a lot of people realize that when, like you said, they're, you know, they put their time, effort, everything into these movies, and then sometimes it's just unfortunate. I love My Bloody Valentine 3D. And it's funny, I when I was listening to them talk about, you know, there was supposed to be a sequel, and the sequel never happened.
Yeah.
And when I talked to the director, you know, and asked him, you know, why it didn't happen. So from what I gather, the studio felt like that the only reason that movie was successful was just because of marketing. So it's funny to see sometimes the marketing can ruin the movie, and then sometimes they feel like they made the movie in a sense. But it's nice now that I think, you know, the quality things and the things that are good. Social media is awful in a lot of ways, but it can be good for something like that. It can give a person,
you have to look at the positives at some stage.
Yeah, it can give somebody a chance. Like, I mean, the guy who directed The Empty Man, they were so excited, I think, with the whole story and the idea, and when they optioned the book and everything, and then it just flopped because obviously the pandemic, nobody saw it, nobody was going anywhere. And then when recently then when this guy reviewed it, it just sort of spiraled, and it was one of those things. It was TikTok again, like everybody was talking about it, and it was being shared everywhere, and it just got me. I was like, and this is coming from somebody who constantly looks for movies but never actually sits down to watch them. I literally went that day and rented the movie on YouTube and watched it.
I just took a quick look up, and actually once you said Chris Duckman, because the name kind of triggered that. And so I had watched some of his reviews. So and then I saw, and then because I saw the trailer for that before, and I remember thinking, because when I saw it was like teenagers, they were on a bridge, they were trying to, you know, tell someone about to conjure up the empty man. I remember I actually thought, is this like that bloody Bye-Bye Man film? Yeah. And I was like, the Something Man films, I'm just like, get away from me, I'm not going to touch it. But I quickly IMDb'd it, and I looked it up, and they were like, it's not full of jump scares, it's a slow build, it's and I'm like, okay, no, this actually looks like something I might want to watch. So I think I'll definitely give it a rent off YouTube.
You really have to. The first time I watched it, I was kind of looking up stuff on my phone about it, and like already trying to find out the story without actually watching it.
I always do that now.
And like I found when I got to the end, I was like, I actually don't even know what was going on. So I had to go back and just put the phone away and watch it properly. Yeah. It's one of those movies. It's not just like, you know, somebody jumping out screaming. You kind of have to pay attention to what's going on to the characters.
That's what I mean. When we go to the cinema now, it's going to be tough to just focus 100% on the film that we're watching. So used to just being able to look up stuff at the same time.
And I think the more instantaneous everything has become now, even a 90-minute film in your subconscious seems like a
2-day bender.
Yeah, like how can I switch off for 90 minutes and just sit there and watch the screen? I can't do that. You know, it's like we constantly have to be at something, whether it's your phone or it's this or it's that.
I think we need to like gently bring ourselves in by watching foreign films with subtitles, and just if you can sit there and look at the subtitles and just dedicate your time or something like that involves full on viewing.
Well, I really appreciate the two of you coming on. It's been great. I feel like every time I could just keep talking and talking and talking. It's one of those things, and that's what I enjoy about your podcast as well. It just feels like you're in on the conversation.
Thank you so much, and we absolutely love yours. It's always on our rotation, and we can't wait when we see it coming up that there's a new episode. So we're very big fans of.
But we should definitely do some stuff in the very near future. Maybe I have
to do a watch along.
Yeah, I have a couple of cool ideas actually.
Brilliant.
I won't say nothing on here because then people will hold me to it. So where can everybody find you guys online?
So we are on Instagram Because You're Home with an underscore in between each word.
And we're on pretty much all platforms for the podcast on Because You're Home. So, and if anyone is listening to us on Apple, we would really appreciate a rate and review.
Same goes for me. Class Horrorcast on iTunes, Spotify, everywhere you get podcasts. The girls' stuff will be down below, so the links will all be down in the description wherever you're listening to this. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Evil wears many masks, but pure horror wears only one. Support First Class Horror on Patreon for as little as $1. Can't get enough of the horror? Carve yourself a deal from official merchandise, only on Teespring. Join us on all social media at First Class Horror. We have such sights to show you.